Dear you, I know exactly what you do when the heavy wave of sadness finally hits you. You are sitting alone in a perfectly safe room. The door is securely locked against the outside world. The temperature is perfectly controlled. You have a refrigerator fully stocked with food. You have a steady income. And you have a life that millions of people across this chaotic planet would literally beg the universe to experience for just one day. And yet, as you sit there in the quiet safety of your own home, you feel a massive, suffocating emptiness rising up in your throat. A hot tear rolls down your cheek. And what is the very first thing your brain does in that vulnerable moment? It viciously attacks you. A cold, calculating voice immediately snaps inside your head. What right do you have to cry? Look at the news. Look at the economy. Look at the people who are actually suffering, people who are losing everything. And look at you. You have absolutely no valid reason to be depressed. You are just being incredibly selfish, ungrateful, and weak. Welcome to the most deeply internalized, agonizing psychological torture of the American mind in the year 2026. You are suffering from the terrifying, silent epidemic of comparative suffering. You have entirely weaponized your own privilege against your own soul. You are actively, relentlessly gaslighting your own pain. Look at the incredibly tragic way you navigate your own internal world. You live in an era where global trauma is live-streamed directly to a glowing piece of glass in the palm of your hand, 24 hours a day. You are constantly subjected to the absolute worst catastrophes, the deepest tragedies, and the most visceral suffering of 8 billion other human beings. And because you are a deeply empathetic person, your brilliant, terrified mind has made a devastating calculation. You have convinced yourself that trauma is a competition. And because your life looks entirely fine on paper, you believe that you did not qualify for the right to hurt. Let us be brutally, painfully honest about the toxic culture of gratitude you have trapped yourself inside. Society has told you that if you have your basic needs met, you are not allowed to complain. So, what do? You force yourself to write in gratitude journals. You mentally list all your blessings every time your chest feels tight. You try to logically, mathematically argue your way out of a clinical depression. But a starving spirit cannot be fed by a full refrigerator. You are experiencing a profound existential dread. You are wrestling with the sheer, overwhelming weight of modern existence, the terrifying pace of technological acceleration, the crushing isolation of a hyper-connected world, and the deep, silent loss of your own authentic identity. These are real, massive, bleeding wounds. But because they do not leave a physical bruise, And because you have a comfortable bed to sleep in, you refuse to treat them. You look at your bleeding soul and tell it to just shut up and be thankful. Do you realize the devastating cost of denying your own reality? By refusing to validate your pain, you do not make the pain go away. You only add a massive, crushing mountain of shame right on top of it. You carry a double burden every single day. You are exhausted by the original sadness, and you are completely paralyzed by the guilt of feeling that sadness. You walk around apologizing for your own existence. You smile politely at your friends. You swallow your tears, and you say the most tragic, hollow phrase in the modern English language: "I really cannot complain." You truly believe that complaining about your emotional starvation is a betrayal of your good fortune. It is an excruciatingly lonely, freezing place to live. You are completely drowning in a beautiful, pristine swimming pool. And because the water is perfectly clear and the sun is shining, you refuse to scream for a lifeguard. You think you are not allowed to drown in clean water. You feel like a complete fraud. You look in the mirror and you hate the person staring back at you simply because they are hurting without a recognizable excuse. You are so deeply, profoundly tired. You are completely exhausted from holding back the floodgates, constantly policing your own emotions, and desperately begging for someone to look at your perfectly safe, comfortable life and say the one thing you refuse to say to yourself: "I know it hurts anyway." Take a deep, trembling breath. I need you to physically drop your shoulders right now. Unclench your tightly, completely locked jaw. Let the air fill the very bottom of your lungs, and as you exhale, I want you to drop the invisible measuring tape. Listen to my voice and let this profound, unshakable truth penetrate the absolute deepest corners of your terrified heart. Pain is not a pie. Pain is not a limited, finite resource distributed by the universe. Someone else experiencing a massive, devastating hurricane does not mean that the rain falling on your head is not cold. Someone else's broken leg does not mathematically invalidate your broken heart. The existence of worse suffering in the world does not magically erase the heavy, agonizing reality of your own emotional exhaustion. I am giving you the absolute unconditional permission to feel exactly what you feel without ever having to justify it to a jury again. It is time to commit a spectacular, beautiful act of rebellion against your own inner critic. You must step out of the courtroom. You must fire the judge inside your head. Your sadness is entirely valid simply because you are the one experiencing it. You do not need a tragic, cinematic backstory to be worthy of comfort, grace, and profound self-compassion. Tomorrow morning, I want you to stop using gratitude as a weapon to beat yourself into submission. Genuine gratitude and genuine grief can absolutely coexist in the exact same human heart. You can be profoundly, beautifully thankful for the solid roof over your head and simultaneously feel completely, devastatingly lost inside the rooms of that house. The human soul is massive enough to hold both the light and the dark at the exact same time. When the tears come, do not swallow them. Do not immediately list your blessings to numb the sting. Let the tears fall hot and fast down your face. Let your hands shake. Let yourself grieve the intangible losses, the invisible pressures, and the silent, heavy burdens of simply being alive in this chaotic era. You are a magnificent, complex, biological miracle. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be overwhelmed. And you are absolutely allowed to hurt in a perfectly comfortable room. Forgive yourself for the guilt. You were just trying to be a good person in a world full of suffering. But your forced stoicism is not saving anyone else, and it is entirely destroying you. The world does not need your hollow, synthetic positivity. The world desperately needs your raw, unfiltered, deeply honest heart. Drop the heavy burden of the good life. Take off the armor of toxic gratitude. Breathe in the thick, chaotic, undeniably real air of your own human experience. You are safe now. You are allowed to bleed. Now, open your eyes and finally let yourself feel it all.